Hello, General Biology 2. I wanted to just talk briefly about week 2, some course updates, some tips, and what's happening this week. So, update, I've been having big problems with Wiley Plus, as have some other students. So, I've decided to move all the study questions into the APIS classroom. So, you'll be able to access them now in tests and quizzes. If you click on the left-hand side, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see tests and quizzes over there. If you click on that, you should see chapter 23 available today, and I'm going to work on getting chapter 24 up there as well. I'll also try and get chapters 21 and 22 posted, even though you all accessed them in Wiley last week. Hopefully this will be a little more reliable way of accessing that material. I can help students who are having issues a lot easier. I think it's just going to make things run smoother. Some of the questions are still going to come from the actual exam question pool, so make sure you write them down. We're still going to you can still use Wiley Plus as a study tool. They will have a whole suite of other questions in the Orion adaptive software, as well as the study section of the ebook. So I still recommend using those, but the exams are going to be held in the classroom again because people have been having issues, and I want to be able to help in a more reliable way. So using the tests and quizzes for the study questions is actually good preparation for our exams because they'll be in our classroom. And lab reports are due this week, and they're still created in LabBridge, but you submit those in assignments. I just wanted to clarify that because there's a little bit of confusion there as well. So I wanted to talk briefly about studying. Those students who took General Biology 1 probably saw a lot of information in there about studying. Courses like biology have higher fail rates than most other college classes. You guys have all passed at least one biology class to get here, so you know this. Students often struggle to understand the material, and they're unprepared for exams. And what happens is you have maybe your typical 18-year-old college student coming straight from high school. They've never had to study before. They take biology. They don't know how to study, and they fail the exams. And, students give up pretty quickly. Or if you are a student who's returning to school from a long break, it's probably been a long time since you've had to study, and the same thing happens. And so in order to prevent that, I'm going to pass on some study tips. It's up to you whether or not you use them, but I recommend it. These study tips can be used in many other classes as well, but I find them particularly effective for biology. Biology is like learning another language. You have all this vocabulary on top of concepts. And so if you just read through the book chapters right away, it's really hard to actually comprehend the material because you're learning the vocabulary as you're reading through the chapters. So the first thing I like to do is spread out my studying. You do a little bit of studying every day. Research has shown that cramming for exams is not effective at all. And they've also done some research on what are the most effective ways to study, and self-testing is the most effective way to study. Highlighting, mnemonics, that kind of stuff, rereading doesn't help. What you need to do is be testing yourself a little bit every single day. I'm old school, so I like paper flashcards. You can do digital flashcards using programs like Study Blue. There's a bunch of different programs on the internet where you can create the flashcards and then look at them on your phone. So if you have an extra 15 minutes while you're having your lunch break or waiting in a doctor's office or something like that, you can pull out your phone and you have your flashcards there. You can also do that with paper flashcards. But on Monday, I recommend creating all those flashcards, and you use the bold words from the text to create it. And, don't bother to read the text yet in the chapter because it's going to be a lot harder to comprehend. When you get to Tuesday, you're going to work through those flashcards, and you're also going to get onto Wiley and answer the study questions that go with the chapter reading. So you'll start your reading there, and you'll start to answer some of the questions. And then the next thing you need to do is copy graphics and practice labeling. You'll notice in these textbooks there's a lot of graphics, and so you need to go through those graphics, whether in the last class it would be something like labeling the components of the cell. In this class, it's going to be looking at organ systems or different details like that. So you want to go through and look at the graphics, and if they are tied to one of the learning objectives, you really need to understand them. So if that means drawing your best abstract replica of the internal digestive system of an animal and then trying to label it, that's what you need to do. On Wednesday, you're just going to go through the flashcards and graphics again and try using Orion on Wiley Plus. This day, you should also read the chapter text. You'll have read a little bit of it if you've done the Wiley study questions, but by now you should have a pretty good grasp on, the vocabulary and some of the concepts that are covered in the graphics. So when you read the text, it should make a little more sense. On Thursday is, your first big self-test day, and what I recommend is logging into this classroom and taking the tests and quizzes for the chapter. Try and do it without using your book. You might have a page of notes or something like that, but see how much you actually know from memory. These aren't scored. You can take them as many times as you want, but this will give you a good idea of which questions you get correct and which ones you have not quite mastered yet. And sort those concepts and vocabulary and graphics into 2 different piles and start focusing on those that you answered incorrectly. On Friday, you should, repeat the same thing, and, if by Friday you're still struggling to understand something, you should send me a message, and hopefully I can help get that clarified for you, because, by this point you should have a pretty good grasp on the vocabulary and the graphics and some of the reading. So if you're still not understanding something by Friday, please send me a message. On Saturday, you're going to go back into tests and quizzes and take that same test again. You should see improvement because you've spent Friday and some of Thursday hopefully working through some of those questions that you didn't quite understand. I recommend, if it's not a test week, to do the same thing where you're trying to take it without looking at your book. Maybe just have 1 page of notes available when you're looking at it. If it is a test week, you don't want to you want to make sure that you're really understanding everything, so you may be doing it open book, and make sure you understand what areas you're kind of weak in, because on Sunday you're going to be taking the exam. The important thing is you need to kind of let your brain rest a little bit on Saturday, so don't cram for the exam. Don't try and, cram a bunch of stuff into your brain. The tests are open book, open note, but, to succeed you really need to have this stuff. You really need to understand it. So, hopefully you've done all that Monday through Friday, and Saturday you're kind of reviewing, and then Sunday you're taking the exam. Now, if it's not an exam week, which most weeks are not exam weeks, you can self-test a 3rd time. And on that 3rd test, use your notes, use your book, and hopefully you should get all of them right by then. So those were my study tips. This week we have our first lab due, and like I've said before, if you do not have your lab kit yet, that's okay. Just send me a message on Sunday if you haven't had adequate time to do the lab, and we'll work something out. It's not a big deal. We're also starting our first forum discussion this week. I think they're going to be pretty fun. So make sure to read through the grading rubrics so you know the expectations for participation. These forums contain a minor group work component, so it's important that you read through the rubrics and post early and post often for your group. And when you're ready to get started this week, go through and read all of the week 2 lessons.